Hello everybody and welcome to the webinar. My name is Pat Grosse and we're just about to start the webinar, which I've called today, How Do They Do That? The 10 personality traits, sorry about that, of entrepreneurial community organizations and the people inside them. My question to you before we start today is, have you ever wondered how come some community-minded groups stand out from the rest and get the attention, dollars and support while you and others watch on? Or maybe you could be one of those community-minded groups. What are they doing that you're not? And have you ever wondered how you too could hit the spotlight for the right reasons and transform your community vision into reality? In this presentation, I will reveal 10 personality traits of entrepreneurial community organizations and the people inside them. We'll look at what makes them tick, why they stand out, how they attract what they want, the number one trait that defines truly entrepreneurial organizations, and how you too can adopt these traits, cut through limiting beliefs, and transform your community vision into reality. And it's true, it's possible. So let's start with, here's what brought me to this webinar. My name is Pat Grosse. My organization is the Community Entrepreneur. And this is a little bit of background of where I'm coming from so that you can understand me. And I remember many moons ago, back in the UK, I got told that to get work in the voluntary organizations and community development foundations, as they are over there, you could only get involved if you could only get employment if you were actually working with them or in some way. And that always fascinated me until I got the opportunity to work with them in Australia, and I understood why. There is a whole mindset, a whole spirit behind working in volunteer-based organizations. So I was happy, fortunate enough to find employment working with community organizations in a government role. And in 2010, I stepped out of that role so that I could do more on the outside. I've worked with all kinds of not-for-profits, and I've witnessed a multitude of scenarios. In 2013, we introduced the Community Entrepreneur as the business model. In respect of some of our go-getter clients, the clients who were kicking goals. And this is what started this journey into this webinar. I've mentored clients who've gone on to win awards. So something truly is happening in the entrepreneur space. So I wanted to share my observations of how they do that with you today. So, are we ready? Okay, let's start, because we're talking about community entrepreneurs. Now, the question is, what is an entrepreneur? And my favorite definition of an entrepreneur comes from Peter Drucker, who says that this defines entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur always searches for change, responds to it, and exploits it as an opportunity. Now, I understand extremely well what that means, because when I worked in my role in the United Kingdom, in the UK, my role involved looking for opportunities to provide professional development across a whole range of sectors for opportunities that were coming out of the European Union at the time. So part of what we did was we were always monitoring change, monitoring new opportunities. And when we saw something that had a funding attached to it, then we could organise some professional development programs, funding workshops, and also large-scale conferences. So in many ways, we were entrepreneurs in what we were doing. And that's what kept us at the forefront and standing out from the rest of the crowd. Now, let's start with, there are three types of community organisations. I think you might have seen this as three types of people, but I wanted to put this into the context of a community organisation. Not-for-profits, sports clubs, arts organisations, charities, employment agencies. So, there are those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that wonder just what happened. And my question today is, which one are you? Now, okay, the picture, the image here at the building site just have some special significance, because that was one organisation that was challenged to put in a bid to transform a building into a community entity. Now, they saw the opportunity, they got on board with community, they bid against other ideas and concepts, and they won. And what they did then is they had to make it happen. They had no experience in managing, new builds, etc., rebuilds. So they had to make it happen. They went through their own organizational processes. They went through change. They went through their strategic directions, and they did what they could to make it happen. And today, instead of just being an organization based in one facility, they've now got three. So they're a kind of organization that actually makes things happen when they see the opportunity. Okay, so community entrepreneurs, as I like to call them, are the energizers. They've got an entrepreneurial mindset. They actually do win awards. And I know that because my clients have done that. They're inspiring. They've always got stories to tell. And underneath it all, they are very well organized organizations. And they don't need to be great big organizations. The most successful ones I've worked with have been small, for instance, neighborhood houses and local community sports clubs. So it doesn't matter what size you are as an organization, as long as you've got the entrepreneurial mindset, the spirit, and these 10 indicators that I'm going to show you. So how do they do that? What are the 10 personality traits of entrepreneurial community organizations and the people inside them? Now, before we start, I just have to give you a little bit more, why me? Why am I saying this? Well, not just working with, being fortunate enough to be working with a whole range of different organizations. In my government role, I spent time auditing and planning with boards and committees of organizations. So I've been fortunate enough to get really inside those organizations and understand how they work. So as I go through this presentation, there will be some examples based on some of the experiences I've come across working or talking to community organizations. Okay, so let's have a look at the first trait. Now, the first trait is that they have an entrepreneurial mindset, that they have clear vision and goals, that they do plan, that they think big, and they overcome fear. Now, I've seen this because I work with organisations, and I look, and if I can tell from their strategic plan, I've just recently been working on one where entrepreneurship in this organisation is very definitely in that plan. The vision is entrepreneurial. It's out there. It's something that they want, they have to aim to achieve. It's not sitting in the comfort zone. They think big. And I have a client who I just realized and spoke to them the other week that they now have what we call the $1 million project. And basically they had a vision of what they wanted to do in their community. They started with a small project, and and they applied for funding and was successful. And then they took it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And when we sat down and actually looked at how much funding they had received over time, and they've now secured funding for the next 3 years as well, their whole project is actually now over $1 million. And it's not just over $1 million, it's the impact that this project is having on their community. Because thinking big, they think partnerships and they think replication of their model. So these guys have an entrepreneurial mindset. They think big, it's in their plan, and fear is not a major issue. Now, fear, and the reason why I've put it into initials, is false expectations appearing real. And that sometimes is what holds many organizations back, is fear of the unknown, is fear of what difference it's going to make to their organization as they grow. Entrepreneurial organizations actually look at it and go, actually, we're going to make more of a difference if we do something than if we sit back and with that fear in mind. So the expectations that you have are not necessarily the reality if you actually make the decision to go ahead. The second one is that they take risks. And this is a huge one. And again, I think it's coming out of that fear factor, especially if you're dependent on funding from any particular source. And there's a huge amount of compliance associated with it, because therefore compliance means compliant. And many organizations tend to become compliant. And that sort of stifles them from taking the risks that's needed. Conversely, to actually achieve the results that whoever's funding them for actually wants. So I see that a lot, is that there's organizations who become trapped in compliance and not willing to take the risks. Now, also those who do take the risks do actually achieve the results. And today, even more than necessary, I am coming across organizations now where technology would help them to innovate, would help them to embrace innovation, move on, but they're not prepared to take the risks involved with that because they're stuck in what they are already doing. So if you do what you always do, you get what you always get. So entrepreneurial organizations recognize that to move forward, they have to take risks. And I will see that in their risk plans. They will have risk plans associated to new initiatives. So they are taking risks, but they are calculated risks. The third one is that threats become opportunities. And I've seen that. They shake off cynicism, especially if things change, if funding models change, if they're getting funding. I saw this a lot in 2009 and 2010, where many of the organizations I were working for were in the adult education space. Changes to government funding models certainly made life difficult for some. but others actually saw this as an opportunity, and they looked ways round, and they just went ahead and thrived. The shackles were off and they thrived. So if you can look through the original impact of what the threat is and look through to opportunities, then this is the space that an entrepreneurial community organisation will work in. If you're doing a strategic, I'm mentioning strategic planning a lot here, but it does actually come down to organisational entrepreneurship. But if you've got a strategic plan in process in place and you do a SWOT analysis, which most organizations should be doing and are very familiar with, but you can actually have an extended version of a SWOT called a TOES. And basically what you're doing is you're matching your strengths with your threats, with your weaknesses, with your opportunities, etc., etc. And by doing that process, what you're doing then is you can look at the threats, the external opportunities, just going through that simple process, bring them together, and hey presto, something is going to jump out at you as an organization to do something different, to move you forward over the next 3 to 5 years. So tip there, if you do SWOT analysis, have a look online at TOWS, T-O-W-S, which is SWOT in reverse. Do that and you end up being able to convert your threats into opportunities, your weaknesses into strengths, etc., etc. Okay, so let's move on to number 4. And these organizations dare to be different. They stand out from the crowd. Again, I've mentioned this before. Henry Ford said, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And again, they look at doing things differently. Now, this is an area where all I had to do was look at an organization's strategic plan. Again, strategic plan. And I could tell straight away whether they're doing more of the same or they've actually analyzed all the information, all the data, their situation, the competitors, the stakeholders, and they've actually identified something different that can take them into the next level. And those organizations that do a full process actually are moving towards something different. But what I come across a lot, and it really pains me, is organizations, clubs, etc., who will do a plan, but they're doing it just from the inside. They're doing it from what they perceive, and therefore what they're getting is more of the same. They're just going to be doing what they've always done, and they'll get what they've always got, and they're going to wonder how that crew down the road is doing, achieving far more than they could have imagined. And that's quite simply because the guys down the road have done their own work, and they've seen the opportunity, and they've dared to be different. They're moving on. They're moving into a different space. Doesn't take much. Just means do your homework, look at what's happening in the outside as well as the inside environment, and if it means going again, contrary to what the rest of you are doing, then that's all well, because you're standing out, and you're the innovator in the crowd, or should I say, innovator outside the crowd. Right, number 5. Number 5 here, the Phoenix. And these organizations are not afraid to fail. And I come across these organizations are like nuggets, and I do see them from time to time. And what they do is I'll give a good example here, is that, again, they may actually be used to or dependent on funding from particular sources, without naming any particular funding bodies. And they have to, in order for that funding, they become reliant on it. And they may be working to achieve outcomes in the wrong demographic for their community. And therefore, they're likely to be failing. And but they're so tied to and dependent on that funding. And the truly entrepreneurial ones actually sit back and go, why are we doing this? Why are we chasing this dollar? This is not where we are going. This is where we want to be, but the flight plan needs to change. So they have actually made that decision to drop the funding source and follow. And what happens then is, as one door closes, another door opens. And so they've adjusted their plan. They've may have dropped out of whatever funding stream. They might have had that funding for years and years and years and years. But if it's not working for them anymore, they've actually taken that initiative and stopped struggling and stopped failing, accepted and move on. And they are the ones who truly rise from the ashes. Okay, now this creativity to me is quite a big one, because truly entrepreneurial organizations, they think and they dream creatively. They're the visionaries, and the dreams become reality. All good ideas come from a vision, and it's not about playing safe. If you have got a vision, make it an exciting one. And this is what these guys do. They will have a vision. They're the dreamers. The vision to change their world, change their community. They see what it's going to be. And then they will look at creative ways to achieve that dream. And if you've got, it's the same story. You've got a number of people in the room, and somebody in the corner, the crackpot in the corner, as they say, is the one who will come up with the next big idea. And that's the same for organizations. You may look at like-minded organizations or similar into what you're doing, and if there's one standing out there going in a completely different direction to the rest of you because they've got creative, just watch that space, because they're the ones who are probably going to be the ones you're going to be looking on and going, what happened? You'll see that a good example here is when you see social enterprises coming out of community issues. So the village bakery, for example, that closes down, and so a community, an entrepreneurial community group will go, well, let's take that over. And how can we do that? How can we achieve that? And just by being creative, or even setting one up from scratch. These are the kind of things that the truly entrepreneurial organizations do. They are prepared to dream. They are prepared to be creative. They've got the vision, and they will do what they can to make it happen. Right, entrepreneur is a French word. It actually means a go-between. So number 7 is that they actually make connections. And I know some really, really good networkers who are within the community sector. And again, as an organization, a community, getting involved in networking may be second nature, but think about, you can bond with your local networking opportunities, or you can go beyond that and bridge with other opportunities. And the entrepreneurial organizations actually look around and look at who can we connect with outside our normal sphere of influence. Now, there was a gentleman called Jim Rohn, and he would say that you become, like the 5 people that you mix with, you surround yourself with. And the same principle will arise with organizations. So if you're used to networking with other sports groups, other neighbourhood houses, other arts organisations, etc. That's fine. That's what you'll be. You'll just be another neighbourhood house. You'll just be another sports club. You'll just be another arts organisation. But if you then start to look at what do we want to achieve? What's our goal? And I can say this with confidence because I've just got this one particular client in mind who managed to move mountains just by looking at who they were making connections with. They wanted something. They wanted an outcome. They'd been trying for years and they were not able to achieve it. One of the things they had to do was to learn how to speak the language of the people they were trying to influence. The second was they actually needed to be visible to those people. So this is what the organisation looked at, is who are we networking with and who should we be networking with. And they then looked at, who the key contacts are. And so through that process, they changed, they upped their game. They connected with key influencers that were able to assist them in influencing the decision makers in the area of where they wanted to achieve this outcome. And they did it. And so that changed their organization forever. Because in many ways now, and I've just been working with them again, they're again in their planning, they're very, very strategic about going out there and networking beyond. They still network with their own, in their own area, but they now look at who can we connect with that's going to help us to achieve. And I don't mean mercenary. I mean that they actually network with them, they build relationships with them, they build trust, they build credibility, and through that they actually then make it. It's like the 6 degrees of separation, but you only want it in 2. So how do you do that? And then that's you look at to see, well, who's out there, who's got a connection to the connection that we're looking for. So it's quite a sophisticated model, but boy, does it work. It changes perceptions all around. And you begin to network with new ideas and new ways of looking at things. So as we're getting closer to number 10, this is one that I would seriously consider, that if you were looking to achieve something and you were finding you were hitting brick walls, particularly when it came to people, then look at who else is out there that you might want to build a relationship with. At some point will have a relationship back to where you're trying to get to. And do it properly, and it works. And it does manifest change. Okay, number 8. Now this is the bit of a ooh bit. I'm sorry, but I can, in my defense, I can say that this is actually something that's very, very out there in the business world. So so number 8 is that entrepreneurial organizations become intuitive organizations. And intuitive, we talk about, there's a principle called the law of attraction. And that goes that wherever you focus on grows. So can you imagine if your organization is out there and it's doing stuff and it's successful? Success breeds success, doesn't it? So you're attracting it, you're looking at it every time you're doing something. And therefore you seem, like the magnet, you're attracting new initiatives to you because people, organizations, government departments, funding bodies, if you're being seen as a success, of course they're going to be attracted to you. And I became very aware of AI, and I'm thinking of artificial intelligence, it's not, appreciative inquiry, a few years ago when I was working in the government role. An appreciative inquiry is a principle where you come together to do a project. In our case, principle is that you Sorry, I'd actually switched my Skype off, so I've no idea what was happening. The appreciative inquiry means that we had a project and we said, look, if you start thinking negative about things, the negativity gets 10 times worse. So we move forward using the positive. That's every time we move forward, it was always about the wins, the gains, etc. And as we did that, the energy in the room grew. In fact, this is the one project where we started with about 8 people and ended up with about 50 from different organisations, simply because of that attraction, of that positivity. And this is what these people are doing, these organisations are doing, simply by what they're achieving through thinking entrepreneurially, through thinking differently. They're actually attracting attention to themselves in the positive sense. And that's what people on the outside are looking in on and seeing what's going on here. Success attracts success, and they're perceived by others as lucky. But there is actually, one of the universal laws at play, if you want to believe that. But I'll give you an example there is, if you are going to be successful, you will get that positive attention anyway. And that's an example of how that works. Before I move on, I'll give you an example there about that. I once worked for a partnership of higher education institutions, and we took a difficult situation and within 18 months turned it into a success. And as a result of that, we got the attention from the regional government, who needed to pack some funding because change was happening, and therefore they saw our success and were able to negotiate with us on how they could work with us in that particular scenario. So let's just give you an example there. Is you will get attention if you are successful. Others out there, your credibility will generate the attraction to you. Okay, so lesson number 9 is that community entrepreneurs are leaders, and they're because of what they do. They seem to be leaders because they're leading the way. They've got a strong sense of justice. I would expect to see in their strategic planning, leadership, advocacy, keywords there. That's actually part of, can you just feel the energy? Leadership, advocacy. They're out there. They've got that energy, that vibe, and I expect to see that in their whole planning processes. And when I say leadership and advocacy, it's not just a word, 2 words. They actually then go on to show how they're going to do it. Again, working with an organisation recently, they've taken that leadership and advocacy, and without actually divulging any information, they've come up with this whole new concept. So this is an indicator that a good entrepreneurial organisation will be seen as a leader because they're different, because they've identified their unique selling proposition as well. And this particular organisation they've redefined themselves in a busy community marketplace, a changing community marketplace, especially with changes in funding, etc., and people and organisations chasing the same funding buckets. So they've actually defined themselves. They've not just created a leadership for themselves, they've actually defined themselves, what makes them different, so that they stand out from the crowd. And they're willing to assume responsibility. And certainly when it comes to partnerships, you'll find them in a leadership position there as well. So they are leaders. There's no getting away from that. Because they attract the right attention, and because they stand out from the crowd, and they've got a definition of purpose. So this is number 10, but if you took it in the number 1 reason, this is the number 1 reason or the number one trait for a community entrepreneur. And that is that it's bigger than the individual. You see, you can have one person who's driving an initiative. We see that all the time. And what happens then is that when that person moves on, the whole thing just falls apart. And I've seen it again and again and again. Sometimes, because we're talking of the nature of community organizations, there may be an argument or something that, brings that whole pack of cards, brings it all comes down falling down, and they may walk away and there's a bit of adversity happening, etc., etc. But the thing about it is, if the whole structure is built around the one person, that is not community entrepreneurship. That is something else. Social entrepreneurs, go out there and they build things. That's great. But what I'm looking here is that you will have that kind of person in your organization in the first instance. It could be a manager, a CEO, could be somebody on the board committee, but there will be an internal driver, and that's great. But the thing about that is that it has to be owned by the organization. And it's not having this really good U-Build program, and that's great, but it doesn't then get embedded, or that journey doesn't get embedded in the organization itself. So I've seen some really good entrepreneurial programs. Once they finish, the organization, it's just gone, because the organization itself hasn't adopted some of the principles that made that program a success. So there has to be, an internal driver, definitely. But to reduce the risk associated with that internal driver, we talk about leaving in adversity. They could have, passed away. The entrepreneurship has to be embedded within your organization culture. Certainly in your value statement, I would expect to see something around, again, how you word it, but risk, creativity, as well as the social justice factors. So entrepreneurship, we should be embedded within the vision, a good vision that actually invokes some entrepreneurial thinking and decision making, and especially and your mission. But in your culture, again, you need to harness the entrepreneurship if you've got too much of it going on. But as long as everybody's clear about the direction, and is able to come up with ideas and feel safe with those ideas, that's not influenced by, or shall we say, shackled by funder requirements, etc., that they can actually compartmentalize that part of the business. But actually to be able to think forward. Also in policies and procedures. So it's embedded in the organizations, and especially if in the plan for the next 3 years. So if somebody were to leave, then the personality of the organization would remain strong. Otherwise, what you would find is the personality of the person coming in would overtake that whole venture into entrepreneurship. Also, you'd be looking at your values, your organizational values, and the way that, people coming into the organization, do they fit with this philosophy? As I said, it's a primary value. So if you don't have entrepreneurship embedded in the organization and in its programs and activities, then you will find that it could all unravel just simply by the change of a person, a role, and a personality. And that's what is the distinction and what makes a community entrepreneur. It's the individuals and the people within the organization. So, 10 steps to manifesting your community vision. So the first step, this is what I'll be doing, is I'll be adopting an entrepreneurial mindset. So if you're not the same kind of person who, or organization for that matter, that is willing to look out there, look at new opportunities and find ways to make them happen, then that's your first barrier. You need to have, number two, a strong vision for your organization. It's not more of the same, or your community, shall I say, because the vision is the destination. So what is that strong vision that you want to achieve? And that's what's going to stimulate the creativity in your organization. You need to be an organization that's prepared to take risks. If you're very conservative, if you're very compliant, or compliance does underpin organizations, but if there's no opportunity or philosophy, or so we say general values need to take those risks, then it's not going to work for you. Be an organization that's prepared to fail. And I don't mean fail. I mean, you're prepared to try things. And if it doesn't work, move on, learn from it, move on. If you can feel that at the organizational level without actually putting blame on people or blame on something, but just accept that we've tried it, it hasn't worked, let's move on, let's learn from it, then that's the organization should be. Dare to stand out from the crowd. And again, the tall poppy syndrome in Australia, it does tend to put people off, organizations off from standing out. I hear it loud and clear. They would do that, but they would be worried about what others would say. And unless you're prepared to stand out, change does not happen. And change is what your community is looking for. So be prepared to fail fast and move on. Be that network, be the entrepreneur, link up different groups, link your own organization with those who can help you to achieve your vision. Take yourselves outside of your normal networking and look at new opportunities. Take yourselves out of the comfort zone. And then to get inside the zone, to be lucky, to attract and act on opportunities. Success breeds success. So if you're an organization that takes the energy and the energy becomes, manifests and more and success, then that's that transformation process that the others on the outside are witnessing. And you become the leader in opportunity, leader in networks, leader in getting things done, because you've got the credibility, because you're prepared to stand out. You know what your unique selling proposition is to the rest. And you've got a credibility. And then number 10 should actually always be number 1, is if you are this kind of organization, then embed entrepreneurship in the organization through your planning, your values, your vision, your mission, your policies, your procedures, etc., and the kind of people in your organization. It's still be prepared to harness it, but obviously entrepreneurship can go all over the place, but actually, just have that mindset and the way to manage it, and that's what gets those results 10 times faster than just plodding along. Now, imagine what an entrepreneurial mindset could mean for your organization, for your community. Can you imagine? What does it look like? What are people saying about your achievements? And how do you feel about that? You might be in that position. Are you ready to change the world? Well, here are two ways you can start this change in your community. Number one is that if you go to this link, entrepreneurial-thinking.gr8.com, that web link, you can download a free copy of 10 Traits of Community Entrepreneurs. And it's a self-analysis guide. So we've gone through these 10 traits and we've gone through those 10 things that you can do. But this guide, and I'm looking at it here, actually gets you to reflect against those questions. You can do this perhaps as yourself if you want to analyze your group or organization, or you can do it as an organization and have a look and look at it truly how entrepreneurial are we as an organization. And so we put that one together. It's a free guide. It's a self-analysis. You can find it on that link, entrepreneurialthinking.gr8.com, or you can go to our main website, thecommunityentrepreneur.com, and you'll again find a link to this link on the front page. And I'm just wondering if Karen, who's my assistant, might want to put that link into the chat box, both links into the chat box. As I move on, and I'm aware that there may be a few seconds delay between me talking and you hearing. The second way that you can do this, so you may have actually been through the analysis, or you might be somebody or an organization that has got a challenge in front of you, and you want to get something happening. The second one is to go through a mentoring process. And this is what we offer. And we do actually, as I said, we've got clients who've gone on and won awards. And look, it's their achievements at the end of the day. What we've been able to do is to just guide them and to give them that entrepreneurial perspective, looking at different ways of looking at things. And they've gone, and it's been amazing because you'll have the initial flush of success, you'll recognize that success, and then the organization takes it to the next level by embedding it into their organization planning, practice, etc. And then the great achievement then is you see them, they just continue to grow in confidence, in success, in recognition, in credibility. And they've all done that because what they've done is the organization has switched its mindset. And you do not need to be a large organization to do that. I've been working with small organizations with a big vision. So what we're offering is a 6-month mentoring program. If this is something that your organization needs to be able to achieve or help on its journey to achieving that vision. So we can identify your specific goals, and each client has a different goal. So it's always one-on-one with the client. We can develop a plan of action of what you want to achieve and what you can do in that 6-month period. And we've gone on to do further 6 months, etc., as they've managed to, we want to do the next step. We incorporate entrepreneurial principles. We've got some, it's an education content here that allows them to try different ways of doing things, look at things from different viewpoints, and it has succeeded in changing mindsets. People have realized, and organizations have realized, that they can achieve something, that they are good enough, and they open up different ways of doing things, and it focuses on achieving the results. So it's always about what you want as an organization. And it builds people, it builds the organization, and it works to get that solution that they're looking for. So Brian Tracy, a business guru, said that 90 to 95% of people will withdraw to their comfort zone when what they try doesn't work. And it's that 5 to 10% who will continue to improve themselves, who will push themselves into the zone of discomfort. And these are always the highest performers in every field. And that goes for the organizations and clients that I'm working with. You have got to be amongst that 5 to 10% that's willing to push yourself. Because when we work with you, you do the work. You go away, you're accountable, you try things, and that's the way that success happens. So you must be in the 5% and committed, prepared to change the perspective, and get that support within the organization to change your perspective, focused, hungry, and driven, and an organization that actually gets satisfaction from results. And look, I've just got a couple of clients here. Kate, have been mentoring her for actually some time now, because we seem to be going from one success to the next. So last month to explore ways to work with local government to position the centre as a valuable asset in their community. And again, that's an example of not being able to be changing the way they communicate, the language that they speak to the local government. And now this organisation is truly entrepreneurial because they are now finding gaps and being able to talk to local government and saying, these are the gaps and these are how we can help. So they're very, very forward thinking. These are award winners. They've achieved some incredible wins, and anything is possible with the right mindset. And these people have definitely embedded entrepreneurship, not just in their planning, but in their programs. They're the ones with the $1 million program, but I can tell you that's not the only program. And there are some 3 or 4 other of their programs in the community development space which are catching up. And the other example here is, again, this is somebody who I like the idea of entrepreneur, what it meant and how it could help their organization. And it showed that again, it's breaking through that risk averseness, creating that mindset. And again, this organization is now talking to and negotiating with bigger players that they wouldn't normally have even entertained the idea of. So that's taken into the organization and their ability to think bigger, think outside the box, and to get out there and higher their level of networking by actually getting straight to the big influences in their area. So if you're interested or want to find more about our entrepreneurial thinking mentoring program, then go to https:// there's a S in there, tinyurl.com/TCE booking. And I'll just